Nancy Pelosi spent decades constructing her empire behind polished doors and private corridors, a career built on backroom alliances and power moves made far from the public eye, until Elon Musk did something no one expected. He tore the curtain down for the whole country to see, and he did it in the most Elon way possible, not through a press conference or a whistleblower leak, but with 5 cryptic words posted at 3 a.m. Eastern on his X account. Operation Doge is live, no links, no commentary. Just a phrase, and then nothing. Musk vanished offline while the internet erupted. Reddit caught fire. Telegram threads spun up every theory imaginable, from extraterrestrial disclosures to deep state purges. A frenzy was instantaneous and unrelenting. Then 12 hours later, Musk reemerged, not online, but in a setting that looked ripped from a Cold War film, a decommissioned mission control room from the Apollo era transformed into something else entirely the screens around him weren't tracking. Rocket launches, they displayed financial graphs, surveillance maps, even faces. Musk stood center stage, surrounded by analysts and plainclothes operatives, arms folded behind his back, unreadable calm, until he finally spoke, and the entire room fell silent. He said this wasn't about politics. It was about betrayal. The broadcast was just 8 minutes, but it was enough to shatter headlines. Musk revealed a covert federal partnership dubbed Operation Doge, designed to investigate systemic laundering of taxpayer funds under cover of foreign aid and humanitarian causes. He didn't name names at first, but the implications were electric. Documents flooded the screen. Emails, ledger signatures, all pointing to familiar names: a senator from Oregon, a former transportation secretary, and aides tied to NGOs in Ethiopia and Myanmar. Then came the face that froze the nation: Nancy Pelosi. Her image filled the center screen as Musk's voice dropped into razor-sharp clarity. He claimed she had been connected to over $327 million in foreign transfers between 2014 and 2021, money that never appeared on public disclosures. Funds funneled through NGOs, charities, and relief orgs traced to offshore accounts in Cyprus, Seychelles, and Luxembourg. Some name of her niece, the same Pelosi who stood as a champion of ethics reform, now accused of orchestrating an international web of financial deceit. The backdrop wasn't green screen fantasy. It was real. A long-abandoned NASA launch coordination center near Cocoa Beach, Florida, now converted into a clandestine financial intelligence war room under Musk's direction. Tables cluttered with monitors, wires spidering across the floor, the air thick with tension and coffee, and the faint were machines at work. This was the heart of Operation Doge, where Musk wasn't just a founder. He was a lead, not out of vanity, but necessity. When someone called out lead, and everyone knew Elon had entered the war room. At the center of the chaos stood Riley Sonnet, mid-40s. Former military intelligence brought in by Musk after a scandal she never spoke about. She operated the data flow like a battlefield commander on Musk's cue. She pulled up a sprawling diagram of financial transfers through shell foundations like Bloombridge Relief Fund, supposedly supporting orphans in Malawi, but traced to a Luxembourg firm registered by Emery Ellison, Pelosi's niece, by marriage, same birthday, same woman, confirmed through voter records and cross-referenced credit card transactions, including a Monterey restaurant and a private jet booking from Stockholm. Musk didn't flinch. He whispered good and moved the war table around. That table sat a former DOJ investigator, a cybersecurity expert known for breaching Chinese telecoms, and Sasha Brand, Musk's legal strategist. Sasha didn't sugarcoat. She said this would provoke war, that Pelosi and her allies wouldn't go down quietly. They would accuse Musk of derailing democracy, of being obsessed with staging a smear, but Musk only nodded. Let them, he said. He wasn't after spin, he was after consequences. He tapped the edge of the table and stared up at the ceiling where a silent drone hovered, recording everything. One day this might all go public, but not yet. Riley brought more to light. Maxine Waters' niece had co-signed 2 of the grants tied to Pelosi's operation, and 1 relief project for Yemen routed funds through 6 intermediaries before landing in a Beverly Hills estate. Sasha shook her head bold. Even for D.C., no. Musk replied, "That's desperation. When they stop fearing exposure, they get lazy." Riley murmured, "We're not pulling a thread. We're tearing a quilt." Musk didn't reply, but tapped 3 times and gave the order: line up the warrants, coordinated raids, Phoenix, San Francisco, D.C., Malibu. All at once, no heads up to Congress? Sasha asked. "I just did," he replied, before disappearing down a dim corridor alone. The next morning felt ordinary until it wasn't black. SUVs rolled up silently to federal buildings across Washington. Agents Move with purpose, no lights, no sirens, just trained focus. They weren't searching, they were confirming encrypted drives, burner phones, hidden safes. They knew what they were after. Malibu, a luxury home purchased under a climate initiative allegedly based in Sudan, was breech locks overridden inside, agents found vaulted foundations, and suspicious ledgers in Phoenix, a gated community home, revealed 2 luxury cars registered under a nonprofit that hadn't filed a grant in 4 years in D.C. Nancy. Pelosi was mid-interview when her assistant whispered in her ear, and everything changed. The interview cut, she ripped off her mic and stormed out demanding names, wanted to know who authorized the incursion. Agents entered her office with a federal warrant signed in Colorado, not D.C., to avoid conflicts. One agent informed her they were collecting materials relevant to congressional grant transfers from 2015 to 2022. Her aide stood frozen. One picked up a phone and was immediately warned that any attempt to destroy data could trigger obstruction. Pelosi see that this is a smear campaign. He's manipulating you. But the agents weren't there to debate. They were there to act outside. Reporters flooded the Capitol, some shouting questions, others celebrating the unraveling of a giant no answers. Came only speculation inside the Doge control room. Riley watched as locations across the country lit up. Green Phoenix completed, Malibu confirmed. Vault seized, D.C. underway. Live feed streamed in silence until Musk gave his final command, a nod toward justice, not with words, but with action, because for him this wasn't about headlines or legacy. It was about exposing a system built to hide and pulling every thread until collapse. One laptop had been encrypted so tightly it required an emergency transfer. Quantico, as Elon Musk stood silently at the table, arms crossed, while Sasha stepped up beside him, holding her phone. They've already started spinning it, she said. MSNBC just went live with a panel claiming this is a tech authoritarian power grab. Musk didn't even blink. What did I say would happen? They come for your character. She replied, they're scared. He said they should be. Meanwhile, back at the Capitol, Pelosi was pacing her private quarters when her phone vibrated. It was a call from someone she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored it. Then it buzzed again, this time a text from a longtime lobbyist that read, they have the grants to Yemen. Files too, you need to shut this down. Her fingers tightened around the phone. This isn't just political, she muttered. This is war. But even in war, timing is everything. And right now, Musk had all the momentum. But Pelosi wasn't going down without a fight. And neither were her allies. It took less than 6 hours for the headlines to change. What began as questions like, did Elon Musk just expose congressional fraud, quickly morphed into something else entirely, as headlines shouted, tech billionaire targets Democratic icon. Elon Musk weaponizes federal power. The coverage wasn't uniform, but the strategy was. Every news outlet with even a whisper of influence began picking a side. CNN opened with a segment showing Musk's old tweets claiming he'd always had a grudge against the political elite. MSNBC questioned whether his federal partnership with Operation Doge had ever been constitutional, and within hours a group of House members released a joint statement calling Musk a threat to democratic norms and institutional balance. But he didn't respond, not on X, not to the press, not even a handful of allies texting him. Behind the scenes, instead, a single message appeared across the official operation. Doge site white text on black reading facts. Don't care who's nervous inside homes across the country. The divide began to crack wide open in a small town outside Tucson. A high school teacher named Denise Farrow paused her lesson to ask her students what they thought of the Musk situation. Half the class shrugged. One boy says, Dad, thought it was about time someone did something. Another girl, Sarah, Mom cried watching Pelosi get grilled on live TV in Tampa. Retired firefighter watched the congressional hearing replay in silence. When his son asked what he thought, he didn't answer. He just pointed at the screen. When Musk held up a government grant form with 3 signatures blacked out and said that is how they hide it in a Chicago suburb, 2 brothers got into a screaming match over dinner. One called Musk a patriot, the other a narcissist with a God complex. Their mother, tired and quiet, just cleared the table without saying a word, and that was exactly what Musk anticipated. Inside the command center, Sasha stood in the press response bay watching live streams of cable panels. They're making you the story, she muttered. Let the Musk replied without looking away from the scrolling data. That's the only car that got left. Riley turned from her station. We're getting new pings, 3 more shell core confirmed, and Maxine Waters' niece just updated her online bio, took down every reference to Fernico Holdings. Musk gave a thin, almost amused smile. Guilty people always clean house in a panic. But the real bombshell came later that evening, when a leak hit a major podcast, not a news anchor, not a cable segment, just a guy named Mitch Enlow, a war veteran, an independent journalist who'd made a name for himself calling out corporate corruption. He'd somehow gotten a copy of one of the private transcript and audio file from a meeting between Pelosi and her legal team recorded by accident through a Bluetooth device. The line was crackly, but the voice was unmistakably hers. They've got enough to bury me if this goes to trial. You don't need to tell me that I know that clip went viral in less than 3 hours. Cable news avoided it. But TikTok, didn't YouTube, didn't independent blogs, didn't suddenly people weren't talking about whether Musk was dangerous. They were asking why no one else had ever shown this level of proof. Pelosi responded the next morning in a televised statement outside her Georgetown home. Her tone was firm, but her eyes betrayed a deep fatigue. This is nothing more than a smear campaign orchestrated by a billionaire who believes his money puts him above the law. I have nothing to hide. But by then the narrative had already shifted. In a coffee shop in Lincoln, Nebraska, a young woman leaned toward her boyfriend and said if she had nothing to hide, why is she so stiff back in the war room? Musk reviewed the footage with Sasha. She's deflecting. Sasha said classic, doesn't deny anything, just attacks your credibility. Musk said nothing for a moment, then set the hearing date. I'm ready. But while the country fought each other, Musk prepared to face her in person. The hearing room was quieter than usual, not because there were fewer people, but because it was packed tighter than ever. Cameras were mounted on every available surface. Reporters lined the back wall like vultures. Staffers whispered, nervously glancing at their phones between breaths. This wasn't routine. This wasn't oversight. This was something else. Elon Musk walked in with no entourage, no lawyers, no press handler, just himself in a gray suit that looked too plain for someone with his net worth. He sat down at the center of the witness table, adjusted the microphone, and waited. Others, clearly uncomfortable, Nancy Pelosi entered last, flanked by 2 aides, and took her seat at the panel. Her posture was straight, her expression calm. But icy. A murmur ran through the room as Chairman Felix Ramon, a representative from New Mexico, cleared his throat and began. This committee convenes today to understand the scope, legality, and ethical implications of Operation Doge, and to allow the American people to hear the evidence firsthand. He looked toward Musk. You may proceed. Musk leaned forward, fingers interlocked. The objective of Operation Doge was simple: follow the money where taxpayer funds were distributed under humanitarian pretenses. We trace them through every layer, from the Department of State to private contractors to charitable entities that were anything but charitable. He paused. I want to be clear. This isn't about party affiliation. It's about the erosion of trust between the people and the institutions they fund. He tapped a button on the small screen in front of him. The room dimmed. As the main display lit up, the first slide showed a wire transfer from a U.S. Foreign Assistance Office to a nonprofit in Armenia. The second, a matching withdrawal 2 days later to a real estate firm in the Netherlands. A third, ownership records tying that firm to a management company in Belize, one linked to a relative of Pelosi. Musk looked up. Would anyone here like to dispute the ownership trail? Because I have notarized copies of each step. No one said a word. Chairman Ramon leaned forward. You're saying this money was routed back into private property portfolios? Yes, Musk replied. And not just one, multiple. We tracked 32 properties across 6 countries. Some are rentals, some were flipped, all were purchased using funds that originated in U.S. aid programs. Pelosi finally spoke with all due respect. Mr. Musk, you're not a federal investigator. You're not accountable to anyone. You're a billionaire with a God complex who hijacked a federal partnership for a personal vendetta. Musk turned slowly toward her. It is personal. Congresswoman, why is your niece listed as a financial advisor on 3 of the shell companies we found laundering those funds? She opened her mouth, but didn't answer. Musk clicked again. Next slide of 2020. Email chain, subject line, urgent transfer before audit recipients too. Senior NGO directors and an assistant from Pelosi's office. The assistant's reply read, confirm delay the filing. They won't flag it if it falls under development assistance. The screen froze on that final line. You could feel the air change in the room. Then came the question that pulled the floor out. Musk looked directly at Pelosi. How does a public servant who earns less than $200,000 a year come to hold indirect ownership in over $100 million in global real estate? Assets. No reply. Cameras zoomed. Reporters scribbled. The silence was louder than anything spoken. Chairman Ramon cleared his throat again, clearly uncomfortable. T.